Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share my journey and our story about contemporary learning and agile learning spaces. My role is Director of Innovation and Technology, and my role is essentially redefining learning and schooling for the current world and for the future across Lutheran Education Queensland. We have about 100 schools across Australia and about 30 in Queensland. I work across both areas. And when I talk about redefining schooling, I'm talking about pedagogical shift transformations, physical transformations of schools as well, supporting everything that was said this morning. I could almost just walk off because I was going to say similar things, but that's okay. And it's great that we have a theme flowing through there. It's great to have Tony Wagner here this morning. I'm a bit of a fan, that's why I asked that question earlier of him. And could I have a show of hands who's seen the film Most Likely to Succeed? Oh my goodness. If there's anything that you take away from my talk, you can throw everything out, except please take this one. Make sure you get to watch Most Likely to Succeed. Unbelievable. I've seen it probably 27 times and it's been hosted all around the world. It's a restricted hosting at the moment. It goes public in about December, January. And it's one of those hard-hitting American documentaries, but it's on the state of education. And it is produced really well, won 25 film awards around the world, including Best Documentary at Sundance. Amazing. And it speaks exactly the way what we've been speaking today about a need for changing the current industrial model of education that has been around for almost 130 years, why and where it's going, and then show some examples like High-Tech High. In speaking about High-Tech High, I just want to show you this brief little video.
We divide the day up in high schools into bits of time, into 40 or 50-minute blocks typically, and then we ring bells and people start to shuffle around the building and do something else. That's an organisational device, it's not an educational principle.
10 university heads in 1890 said, in 11th grade, everyone should learn chemistry. In senior year, everyone should learn physics. A lot of these subjects are great, but these priorities were dictated 124 years ago.
The old blue-collar industrial model of education is already gone. We're already living in its wake.
What happens to society when hundreds of millions of people have that aimless, rudderless feeling of, I've been replaced by a very small box? I don't know if there's a solution.
We all learn in different ways. This isn't the way to do it, this is the way that I did it.
If the assignment is you get it back and you crumple it up and throw it in the trash can, that's kind of one student experience. And if the assignment is to produce something that you're going to present to professionals in the field, that's completely changing the whole dynamic.
We are trying to have that type of perplexity and curiosity get inculcated in our students.
Saying your parents, all your friends' parents, and a bunch of people you don't know are gonna be here to see the work you did. It creates an aspect of authenticity, because we are creating something for an audience.
The things I think in life that give us some of the greatest satisfaction is making something that wasn't there before.
And I can't wait for that moment when it does work and I'm completely done with it. And it's like all leaves. It'll be one of the greatest moments in my life.
When kids have that feeling, it's transformative for them. I made this, and everyone's coming to look at it.
That's Most Likely to Succeed, and as I said, if you can go to the website Most Likely to Succeed, you can figure out how to order it for a showing, and there's a whole lot of resources. The narrative of the film is basically what I'm about in my role across education, and the narrative is that the world is calling for a different type of individual, and the industrial model of schooling does not produce that individual. And the contemporary world is calling for individuals that are developed in soft skills, much more developed in soft skills by the time they leave primary or secondary education than when we were at school. I know a lot of those soft skills, and I'm 53, and those soft skills I'm still developing. Okay, I'm still developing resilience. I'm still developing grit. I'm still developing critical thinking, and I'm still working in my growth mindset. But those soft skills are so important today. And so being able to collaborate, being able to co-work, being able to have that natural curiosity, being able to embrace failure. We all heard it today. Now, if the world is calling for that, and the current individuals we are producing do not fit, they are going to be non-productive, non-authentic, and not happy. So we really need to produce different individuals. And to do that, we need to have a different type of schooling. And if we're going to have a different type of schooling, it's going to be based on transformational experiential pedagogies, such as project-based learning, etc., that's going to make learning more authentic and more relevant. If we're going to do that, we have to have schools that look different. We have to have teachers that behave differently. And so our classrooms, as you walk past some of our classrooms in our schools and other schools around the world, and you see glowing coloured beanbags or people moving around, it's not because it's just increasing some motivation for a short amount of time and a bit of fun. There is a lot of thought behind it, particularly if you want kids to work in multiple modes, whether they can have an area to work in where there's caves, watering holes, mountaintops, and campfires. And you may have heard those modes of learning within a classroom. One of the schools that was featured in that film is EduTECH High in California. We've seen it twice today now, haven't we? And I've just brought back 33 school principals from EduTECH High in California, and it's my third visit there. And we brought back 33 after working there a few weeks ago in EduTECH High, as well as Stanford D School and E3 and some places in San Francisco as well. And it was really powerful in getting school principals, school leaders, as well as those people in charge of teaching and learning to dig deep about experiential learning and to be absorbed in and feel and smell and taste the culture of a learning environment for a contemporary world. And that's part of my role. I mean, that's a very enjoyable part of my role, to be able to entice others to engage in this learning by taking them to places of best practice, as I do when I go to Finland or Scandinavian countries, or such as recently EduTECH High or some places in Australia. You can see there's some photos, and you can see there we had the one in the middle there, Larry Rosenstock, who's the CEO of EduTECH High, and we had, a few hours with him. And you can see one there with Carol Dweck. I'm just trying to find the photo there. Yeah, to the right. On the right there, just on the Professor Carol Dweck, growth mindset professor. We got to have a few hours just sitting around with the table, talking about growth mindset, fixed mindset, and talking about contemporary learning. So that's an area I work in, but we need to see this. We need to see contemporary learning practice in contemporary learning schools, because I believe we have a moral imperative. The students in our care now, if they get out into the workforce and cannot find a job, or can find a job which they could easily have got without doing schooling or tertiary entrance, then we're doing them a disservice, a major disservice. We have a moral imperative as school leaders to make sure we're providing the conditions for success, that we're going to produce individuals for the contemporary world. And that's our moral imperative. I'm going to show you some examples, not the only examples, in my school systems making some inroads into it. Not perfect, and we fail quite a lot, and we iterate that failure. But we also have some successes. So recently, The Educator magazine wrote up a number of our schools in terms of contemporary learning, agile learning environments, changing pedagogy, looking at more authentic type learning. And the Australian, and also a number of news services, such as in Australia, the Channel 9 and Channel 7 have done some documentaries on what we're doing in some of our schools at the moment. Now, if you were to have a look even at those photos there and say, look at those kids on beanbags, look at those kids climbing ropes, anyone can do that. It's not about that. It's how you tell your narrative. How does that fit into the narrative of contemporary learning? Really important. So the role I work in is about awareness raising. I don't do top-down, and I really have to prove that this works. And I take people on a journey, physical journeys as well, in terms of seeing best practice, understanding it, seeing if it can raise the awareness, and then getting them to buy in. They can actually see it work. And if there's one thing that, even that movie is a great first step, most likely to succeed, has got some resistors I've seen in schools in terms of changing practice, to the point where they say, even after the movie, or 1.5 hour movie, I think I see how that fits in today's world. And those people are sitting on the fence going, I think we really need to change at this school. And those advocates going, this is really good, it reinforces what I'm thinking. So then that gets buy-in, and then after we get buy-in, we work on getting some mainstreaming. And the research shows if you get 40% of change in anything in your school or system or district or nation, then you've got mainstreaming happening. So if you have a look, I've obviously got photos up here of what our environments look like in our schools, secondary and primary. They don't look like classrooms. We have classrooms that have 180 students, 5 teachers co-working, modelling collaboration. If we want students to collaborate and co-work, we need to model it. We need to model co-working collaboration. We need to actually change our pedagogy, transform our pedagogy to experiential-based learning. So the emphasis is on soft skills, and as I have here, there's some of the soft skills, and they do vary, and we've heard a number of 21st century soft skills, but it's not foreign to us. But the world is calling for us to work on these from early years throughout schooling, so students leave with these soft skills. I know the media in Australia is really pushing soft skills. I know that, finance companies, we've read in the papers from a number of large finance companies saying that, come straight to our company because we want those soft skills developed, not necessarily your uni degree at this moment in time. So we can see all the rhetoric around this as well across the world, how extremely important. If these skills are developed during a transformational pedagogical exercise, say to experiential-based learning, project-based learning, doing projects, authentic-based projects in schooling, that's going to stick. And the content associated with that is going to stick. We know the research that says 3 months after leaving a school stage, let's say leaving year 12 or leaving matriculation, within 3 months you've lost 90% of your content knowledge. However, if it's applied in experiential ways such as project-based learning, utilising these soft skills, this is what the world is calling for. So we can work the traditional model there. Instructional teaching, focus on recall. Where does it lead in a traditional school? Well, entering traditional post-secondary schooling learning and entering traditional jobs. We know traditional jobs are dying very quickly in a number of sectors. We know the growth jobs are on creativity. We know the growth jobs are on innovation. So in transforming schooling, maybe we could be leveraging experiential or PBL type pedagogies. Maybe we could have agile learning environments that cater for many modes of learning, so that it's an environment, say a classroom, which allows kids to work in 1 to about 6 or 7. That's called a campfire. Allowing spaces whereby you can have a mountaintop, because sometimes we have to explicitly teach, and that's okay. We're not throwing that out. We're just saying we have done it too much for too long. So 10 minutes of explicit teaching in a period of a session of, a third of the day is maybe all that's required. But you need to get all those people in that room or in that space all together like we have right here. You need to have that watering hole atmosphere in the room as well, so that you have many students able to mingle with other many students. And you also need to have those cave spaces within the room where people can work independently. Now, cave doesn't mean 4 walls. If you walk into any of our spaces in our schools, you'll see sometimes the students quite happy sitting on a stage area by themselves because they feel empowered and they feel like they're a little bit higher, and that's a cave space for them, or sitting near a window. It doesn't have to be a cave as such. And so what that leads to is people being entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial. And that's really important. That's what the world's calling for. And we have a moral imperative to walk on that right side and transform our schooling and our schools. So, you know, what's the components of a learning narrative? It's really important to get our learning narrative right. And I say this time and time again across our schools. As parents are walking around past some of our classrooms in our schools, they'll see kids sitting in beanbags and classrooms not with school desks, but with Genius bars or with cafe booths or whatever it may be. Now, some parents will go, "Oh, that's not like when I went to school." But it's not about the furniture and it's not about the beanbags. So you have to get the narrative right, and you have to say how we're developing soft skills. And to develop soft skills, we need to actually transform into an experiential-based, project-based learning. And to do that, we need to have the environment different, and that's why we have got a different environment. You need to get that whole narrative right. Otherwise, someone's going to pull that apart. You know, we find that some of the supporting conditions for success are those. There needs to be distinct vision, mission, and values. Needs to be guided professional learning the whole way. There needs to be a lot of risk-taking encouraged by leadership. And there needs to be embracing and learning from failure. And, you know, there needs to be goals and signposts. And there needs to be some non-negotiables. And they're tough, aren't they? To be able to say to a group of teachers that aren't on the journey yet, that's okay, we'll provide all the conditions to support you along the way. This is where we're headed, and this is what it will look like, and we're going to give you 3 years, and the non-negotiable is you can't exit, and if you do exit, you can't come back. That's a tough one to do, isn't it? So, needs to be future focused. And you need to keep that endpoint in mind. And as I said before, justify those sub-initiatives in the narrative. Why does the classroom look like that? Why is teaching changed that way? We need to tell the whole story. So for that moral imperative. You know, there was one thing I haven't mentioned throughout this whole talk. What word haven't I mentioned? Why we're here at the conference. Technology. I didn't mention anything about educational technology. I don't think I even mentioned the word. And I purposely did that. In my travelling around, say, around the world in Scandinavian countries, looking at best practice schools, high-tech, high, etc., you know what? They never mentioned technology once. I just spent a week at high-tech high, Stanford, Monte Vista, E3 High School and all that, all across California, and the word technology wasn't mentioned once. Why? Because it is ubiquitous. Technology is ubiquitous, and when we walk into these high-performing schools, they know how to use technology and when to use technology, and it is ubiquitous. And I think that's a really important thing to take away. It's definitely there as a tool, and it's definitely important, but in these settings, I've seen it extremely ubiquitous. Here's the last little slide I'll leave you with. And this slide is, if you want to tap into something, tap into this. The Innovation Playlist on Most Likely to Succeed website has 6 little key areas that you can make a start. We can't transform a school overnight. It might take 7 years. But you can start on some of these. One of them is shadow a student. It's a beautiful one. Have you ever shadowed a student for a whole day and experienced sitting next to them for a whole day and going to PE lessons, then maths and then English and all that? And then by the middle of the day, I've just seen one deputy do this, middle of the day go, is this what our kids do all day? This is terrible. And we thought we scored ourselves this way as being an embracing collaborative school. It's very important. 6 little key initiatives. If you have a look at that one, it's very helpful. Thank you for allowing me to share very quickly our journey, and if you have any questions or you'd like to visit some of my schools or drop me a line or drop me a Twitter, I'd be most grateful of that and happy to connect with you. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Yes.
Hey, thank you for sharing with us your thoughts. I just want to ask, what's your measure of success? Because education is something that we do now, but the outcome is so long down the road. So for now, what is your measure of success?
Yeah. If you're asking what my measure of success is, then I'll tell you, my measure of success is knowing that our moral imperative of preparing those students for the future, I believe, if all the research is correct and what we're saying about for a contemporary world, that they'll be a happy and productive, whatever productive means, citizen of the future. And yes, we're not going to know that till they're 25 or 30 or 35 and they have a stable family, they're happy and they're relevant and they're producing, they're solving problems in the world. Immediately, in terms of schooling, we have a number of things to be able to test resilience, not test, but to show how they're growing their resilience, co-working, collaboration, critical thinking, growth mindset. Not just observation, using a lot of evidence in project-based work. But I can also jump back to, if they are not retaining 90% of the content knowledge 3 months after leaving school, what's more important? And I think that's really important. We've got to keep that front and centre. Another question? Thanks, guys. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to have a small roundtable discussion. And Derek, you've just left the stage. I'm going to invite you to come back up right away. And you may have already introduced yourself adequately, but if you'd like to say anything more about your position on our topic today or anything.
Have I got the mic on or off? Is that on? Yes, it is. Thank you. Yes, on this, today I'm part of the BYOD. I have got friends, haven't I, coming up? Correct? Mm-hmm. Yes, good. I'm part of the BYOD panel. I'm going to talk about bring your own devices. I'm probably a little bit controversial on the topic, and hopefully I can share that with you when we talk about it today.
Okay, perfect.